Happy Friday. We made it. Well, at least we got to get through today, and then we can officially, raise our arms in victory and say we made it through the week. Welcome into it. Tons to get to, including the latest on the gun ban litigation in both state and federal courts. Got some things happening, even overnight, learning of some things, and getting you the very latest as we get it here from all sides, from at least, the different cases there are in state and federal courts. Later on this morning, there's going to be a hearing in the federal cases. And we'll touch on that. We'll also hear some of what Attorney Thomas DeVore in the state-level cases had to say last night, and even getting out of the gun ban stories. A case out of Cook County dealing with ammo tax apparently is going to be, appealed after a court ruling. So we'll get to all of that here in the next half hour. You can always chime in live and local here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And you can do that by simply calling in at 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. Also, I want to give a shout out to people reaching out via email. You can email me, bishoponair@gmail.com, and share with me your thoughts. If you've got different story ideas, things that you're interested in, or if you just want to compliment me, greatly appreciate those compliments. Been getting tons of emails and correspondence, even snail mail letters to the radio station, thanking me for the daily coverage on a host of issues, everything from the council roundup to the coverage of the Second Amendment cases. And Peter, Jeff, Nate in particular, made a comment that really stuck with me yesterday, made me smile, calling me a beast of the boards, because here I am operating all kinds of multimedia stuff for the live stream, and he's listening down in Tennessee. So obviously there's an audience outside of Illinois seeing what's happening in Illinois and wanting to keep tabs on that. So appreciate everybody reaching out. You can do so, bishoponair@gmail.com, or definitely follow me. Twitter, Bishop on Air, Facebook, Bishop on Air, YouTube, where a lot of you are watching these videos live or after clipped out. You can see all that Bishop on Air on YouTube. I, of course, work here at the radio station in the mornings, but all this production is totally independent and me getting it where it needs to go in the interspace, the interwebs. It's a lot of work, and I appreciate when people see that work and reach out and pat me on the back. It fuels my fire, that's for sure. All right, let's get into it with Attorney Thomas DeVore on the state-level cases, talking about consolidation, and he filed for consolidation on Valentine's Day. He got 4 cases, and we'll go through it. One in Effingham County got a TRO. One, and that was appealed by the state. That went to the appellate courts. 2 of 3 judges on the appellate court sided with DeVore, saying the merits are there for possible victory on the issue of equal protection. And then after that Effingham County case was upheld by the appellate court, you then had the White County case filed and a temporary restraining order issued there, and then a second Effingham County case, third for DeVore, that also got a temporary restraining order. But in the mix of that, there was that 4th case out of Macon County from State Representative Dan Calkins and Attorney Jerry Stocks, where they argued a little bit different arguments. They included special legislation in their arguments about equal protections, and all of these cases having temporary restraining orders for the collectively thousands of people that signed on as plaintiffs for those cases. But DeVore wanted to consolidate those cases, and on Valentine's Day, filing for consolidation, while he shared last night that those 4 cases are not going to be consolidated. Let's hear a little bit of what Attorney Thomas DeVore had to say about the consolidation and the note he says that they got. I have yet to see the note. Checked the various dockets. The latest entries for those were on Wednesday, the 22nd. So nothing that I can see, at least. Maybe these orders go out first and then they're posted eventually, but I haven't seen the document yet. But Attorney DeVore sharing with his audience that indeed they have denied consolidating those cases, all 4 of them, but instead only consolidating his 3 cases.
We got the order from the Supreme Court today on the consolidation issue, and it appears, they consolidated our 3 cases, which is fine, into Effingham County. But at the request of Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Raoul, and State Representative Dan Calkins, they left Dan Calkins' Macon County case separate and apart from ours. Okay. And I can only assume that the governor's office and the attorney general and the legislature of Illinois are very pleased that the Supreme Court made the decision to leave that case separate. And I guess that also, since it pleases the governor, the attorney general, and the Illinois General Assembly, that also pleases State Representative Dan Calkins, because that's what he asked for. So it is what it is. I can't control it. And we'll see what the Macon County case wants to do. They can do whatever they want. You know, I have a few arguments that we can make in our, because we're going to have now 1 case in Effingham County. And we'll continue to pursue our case the way that I've always pursued this for you, and the way that I think is in the best interest to pursue for you. And I'm not going to let it alter us, the fact that something's happening in another case that is going to take a path that it's going to take. Okay. So I can't control that, sadly. I tried to help influence it by consolidating it with ours, but, you know, again, you can all thank Dan for getting his way that aligns with the governor and the attorney general's argument. So
DeVore goes on to talk more detail about some of his plans, including amending the case further, which could include allowing more people to join the case, which he says if that's allowed, then they would be part of the temporary restraining order as the case progresses. But again, the news that DeVore shared last night was the Illinois Supreme Court consolidated his 3 cases, the 2 out of Effingham and the 1 out of White, but they left the Macon County case stand alone, and that actually has a hearing coming up in Macon County on the 3rd of March. Macon County's case was moved from March 20th to March 3rd, so we'll have a hearing there, and there could be a decision soon, and then it could be appealable all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court. So that case could be further advanced, while DeVore, in his consolidated 3 cases, builds the record that he's talking about and making sure that he has the evidence to go to court and show that the argument the state has about training as a means for allowing for law enforcement, wardens, retired police to not have to comply with the state's gun and magazine ban, saying that that is a facade and there's no true legitimate rationale behind that argument of that they're trained so that therefore they can have more rights to the Second Amendment than the regular citizen. So that seems to be the track that DeVore's on. It's not going to be joined with the Macon County case. The Macon County case could make it all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, and a decision could be made there, or that could be held and delayed, or however Jerry Stocks, the attorney with the Macon County case, wants to handle that. So that's the news out of there, right? DeVore sharing that the Supreme Court has consolidated his 3 cases, but left the Macon County case separate, and DeVore's looking to possibly amend his cases and consolidate it into one in Effingham County, and possibly could add more names to it. So I hope to connect with DeVore a little bit later on this morning. I'm reaching out to him at like 4:30 this morning. So Tom, I apologize for waking you up if I did, but hopefully we can hear from him as to some more detail of what's going on there, and see that documentation as well, because it's always good to see the court filings. Another issue that we'll talk about next deals with the federal cases, and how there's a hearing today in those 4 federal cases. We'll touch on that. We'll also hear about a separate case that Todd Vandermeide discussed, a case that has his name associated with it out of Cook County, dealing with ammunition taxes. And this has been a years-long issue with Cook County implementing ammunition taxes and it going through the court system, but back to the lower courts with a new case. And we'll hear some of the latest and the reaction from Todd Vandermeide there as well. All right, let's get back to it. Review some of the latest developments in the federal cases against Illinois' gun ban. There are actually 5 of them. There are 4 in the Southern District, another one that was transferred out of state court, to federal court. And we'll actually start with that one. That's the one that the McHenry County State's Attorney Patrick Keneally brought forward in state court, but it was transferred to federal court. So now it's in the Northern District of Illinois. And the latest there is that you've got the judge saying the plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction, defendants shall respond by 3/24/23. So that came on Valentine's Day. So we'll see that, and by the 3rd, the defendants are to respond to a complaint as well. So you've got some dates that are being set here for when there needs to be response and back and forth and briefs filed. So that's in the Northern District. But then you have 4 cases in the Southern District. You've got the case with the Illinois State Rifle Association. You've got the case with Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois, and that group, that's the Illinois Gun Rights Alliance. That's actually different. They're charging the state violates rights on the gun and parts ban. But you also have a case, Langley. This was the case out of the Crawford County state level court that was actually transferred to to federal court in the Southern District of Illinois. But then you also have this case from the 4th case. It's Barnett, and this one includes the National Shooting Sports Foundation. So all of these different cases, 4 in particular, there's a hearing today at 10 o'clock. And the judge, we talked about this briefly yesterday, but the judge ultimately holding a conference call with all 4 cases to discuss when the state needs to respond and the possibility of consolidating those cases. So this is going to be interesting to see ultimately what unfolds here in the next few hours as we get into that hearing. We'll be updating you with all of the details on that. I might do some live tweeting about the hearing. Then we'll get some instant reaction from the likes of Todd Vandermeide and others in these cases. So a lot of moving pieces in the federal courts with 5 cases, 4 of them in the Southern District, 1 in the Northern District, challenging Illinois' gun ban. And we got something separate that we'll talk about coming up next here with the issue of Illinois and Cook County, and those of you in Cook County who are wanting to buy ammunition, well, you got an extra tax on top. Well, the challenge to that was struck down, and we'll hear what Todd Vandermeide had to say about that last night. So stay tuned. We'll get to that coming up here on WMAY. We've been, of course, unpacking a lot of what's happening with the gun ban challenges in the state courts and the federal courts with consolidation of 3 of the 4 state-level cases. But possible consolidation could be discussed today at a hearing in the Southern District's federal courts for Illinois. But that's all about the state's gun and magazine ban, not about the, FOID card, which is the Firearm Owner Identification card in Illinois. I'll share with you some comments that I got from State Senator Neil Anderson about legislation he's filed at the State House about the FOID card and looking to get rid of the FOID card. So that's coming up here in a bit. But you've got some other issues at play as well in the courts, including a case that's been working through Cook County for quite some time, and it deals with ammunition taxes. And this case actually has already gone all the way up, at least a different legal challenge has gone all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, and the Illinois Supreme Court kicked it back down to the lower courts, essentially having Cook County modify their ammunition tax, and they re-implemented their ammunition tax. Well, Todd Vandermeide, along with others, sued Cook County, and that case made it all the way through to a point where a lower judge has made an order and a ruling, and Todd Vandermeide sharing that on his Freedom's Steel channel last night, where he ultimately said that the judge, no pun intended, shot down their legal challenge of the Cook County ammunition and ammunition tax. So here's Todd Vandermeide.
She has dismissed this case, and with prejudice, meaning we can't refile this case in the district court. However, we are going to appeal this case, and I would let you know that when I got asked to be part of this case, I insisted on being able to have a say in the briefs. And in the briefs I edited, we brought up the New York decision. I thought that would be a game changer, but evidently this judge hasn't taken any time to really read the New York decision. And so with that, just punted. I mean, it's a short order. There is no finding of fact. There is, New York doesn't apply. Oh, the First District Appellate Court actually, under their historical analysis, this doesn't apply. I'm going to go back and reread that First District case from Gun Saves Life, but I'm going to beg to differ with them because the test that was enumerated is, does this qualify? Does this impact the right to keep and bear arms? Yes, it makes it more expensive. It makes it more expensive to acquire, to train, to practice. Therefore, the first prong of the test is met. Now it shifts to the government to come up with a historical analogy. I wonder if Cook County is going to be so stupid as to bring up the Boston Tea Party and talk about the taxes levied on tea back at the time. But we'll see. So with this, not a great decision, cuts against us, but I mean, this decision is 2 pages long. That's it. It isn't any more than that. And it was brought in state court. It's class action eventually, but it'll get appealed up. And this may be the first real shot to get to the Illinois Supreme Court with a Bruin challenge, a New York challenge, and have the court take notice on how they're going to have to reframe their former debates and discussions, because they sat there and brought up, they were using the two-part test from the Seventh Circuit previously. This is why we brought in New York. There is a Second Amendment claim here. And I'm kind of surprised Cook County didn't want to bring this up into the federal courts like the AG has done on other stuff. But with that, we're going to go forward. We're going to move forward on this. We're going to bring in some heavy hitters on this. And if you've seen the briefs that are going around and the responses to the California stuff, is how the state's not making their case, all the things that are going on with how the test is applied, what New York actually means. I mean, you can just strike out some of that, and it's, you're going to see these intense briefs as to how this district court got it wrong.
So a lot of back and forth still expected when it comes to the ammo tax that's in Cook County, that a lot of you in Cook County, if you can find a gun store that sells ammo, then you're getting taxed on top of what the actual ammo costs. And something that Cook County's doing. Could that happen statewide? Especially now that, courts said, hey, the ammo tax is fine. Could we see a statewide ammo tax? That's obviously something that a lot of people are going to be watching and see what happens. But listen, there's all kinds of stuff that could be happening at the Illinois State House, aside from the challenges in the judicial branch, right? I mean, you've got a state law that was enacted January 10th to ban magazines and guns of certain kinds, and that's tied up in the courts right now. You've got temporary restraining orders only impacting several thousand people. Will we get to a point where we've got that injunction for everybody across the state, where then possibly is going to have to go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court to deal with the question of gun bans and how that could reverberate across the country. There's still a lot going on in the courts, but even at the State House, with lawmakers in session through mid-May, they could bring up a whole host of things. I've seen people worried about prohibiting flak jackets, or maybe we see more background checks for ammo purchases, or maybe statewide sales taxes on ammunition, similar to what Cook County's got going on, or a whole host of other things. So that's still possible. We could see more gun control legislation at the State House, and we'll do what we can to keep you updated on the very latest there. I do want to get to another issue about the FOID card, because legislation that is filed at the State House would repeal the FOID card. The FOID legislation. State Senator Neil Anderson, I connected with him a while back, and we talked about the reason he brought that bill forward, so we'll get to that in a moment, but take a phone call as they come in at 217-629-7970. Good morning, you're on WMAY.
seems to me like they just keep ushering Illinois.
You're going to have to repeat that. It dropped there for a moment.
Oh, seems to me like they just keep passing laws to usher people out of Illinois. You know, they leave to go.
You must be going over a horrible place and not having great cell service. We heard that they seem to be passing stuff that makes people want to flee Illinois. I mean, look at the numbers. Year after year, the estimates are Illinois is losing tens of thousands of population. And it's not a blip. It's year after year of population decline. And it's real because, well, we lost a seat in the U.S. Congress because of population decline. Appreciate that. Got to take another quick break and then come back and share with you some of the rationale behind the Void the FOID legislation from Republican State Senator Neil Anderson. Legislation he doesn't really expect to advance, but he wants it to start a conversation. So stay tuned. We'll get to that coming up next here on WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow along, Bishop on Air on Twitter. It's a good place to follow along live with the latest developments, and be sure to click the notification bell whenever I do anything, either on YouTube or on Twitter. If you click those notifications, you'll be able to stay updated on the very latest that I put out. All right, back with Springfield's Morning News, and of course, a lot this hour, actually all this hour, we've been talking about gun legislation, gun litigation, and everything in between with the status of consolidation of state-level cases, the possible consolidation of federal-level cases, a court order out of Chicago and Cook County dealing with Cook County's ammo tax. That's going to be appealed by the plaintiffs there. But you also have at the State House legislation that's being filed. One that was filed by Republican State Senator Neil Anderson. We really don't expect it to go anywhere, but he says it's an important conversation that needs to be had. I chatted with Senator Anderson a few days ago, and we talked about what the bill ultimately does and where he sees this heading.
Yeah, so I've introduced the repeal of the FOID legislation every year since I've been in office. It's just a duplicity of current law. This is nothing more than a way for the state to, get some money from people to exercise their Second Amendment right. The process of getting a FOID requires you to go through a background check. The same background check that you have to go through to get a FOID, you have to go through every time you purchase a firearm, and that is the federal instant background check. So you go to purchase a firearm, you have to present your FOID card, which you had to go through the federal instant background check to get. Then you have to fill out paperwork to go through the federal instant background check. It's not needed. It's just a duplicity. It's something that makes people think they're safer than they are. I mean, it doesn't do anything as far as safety.
So Anderson also talked about how you have instances of this being in place and even background checks across the country being in place, and that doesn't keep guns out of criminals' hands who are intent on doing harm to others. You have in Illinois several cases of the FOID card not doing what it was supposed to do for criminals, keeping criminals from having guns. You had the Aurora shooting at the warehouse in 2019, where an individual had a FOID card, had a gun, applied for a concealed carry license, but then found that there was an out-of-state felony charge. State police voided his FOID. However, they did not go and confiscate the FOID or any firearms he may have had, and he went and committed a crime and killed several people in Aurora in 2019. Then in 2019, you also had a instant of the Highland Park shooting suspect having 2 visits by police in Highland Park, and in that case, you had state police receive a clear and present danger notice from local police that should have prevented that suspect from getting a FOID card, but he got a FOID card with his dad as a sponsor. Then in 2020, he purchased firearms with that FOID card as a 19-year-old, as a 20-year-old, and then as a 21-year-old allegedly shot up the Highland Park Independence Day Parade last year, prompting people to move towards, having a weapons ban and magazine ban. So you can see that even with this in place, even with the FOID card in place and processes to try to block people from getting, it hasn't worked to varying degrees. Sure, it's kept some people from getting firearms, but in these two instances I just brought up, clear indication that there's some problems with it. And is it a duplicitous efforts of layers of trying to keep people from having their Second Amendment rights? And if you recall, we covered this extensively when it was going on. The delays in people getting their FOID card renewals right before the pandemic and then at the start of the pandemic, especially during all those riots that were happening across the country in 2020, people were wanting to exercise their Second Amendment rights. But in Illinois, there were delays of months, up to a year in some cases, up to a year and a half in some cases, of people not able to get their renewal. State police had to actually put out letters to gun dealers saying, hey, that's an expired card. You can take that. Doesn't work. Don't worry. We're not enforcing it at this point. Led to a lot of problems, right? So the delays in people exercising their rights, that's something else that Neil Anderson pointed out was a major problem.
Yeah, so a lot of things there. I mean, number one, of course, when somebody is, and I admit I'm using, an extreme example, but it's not an uncommon one. You have a single mother, right? And she has to walk home from work every night, and she decides, you know what, I think I'm going to get a firearm so that I can protect myself on the way home. In Illinois, she has to go through this whole process, and it's a minimum of 60 days to 90 minimum to get that FOID card, so then she can go forward and then purchase a firearm and then go through a concealed carry course. So in that time frame, she is not able to exercise her Second Amendment right of self-defense. And of course, that's, like I said, that's an extreme example, but it's not one that's far-fetched at all. So, we're just, the FOID card is not, again, it's not preventing bad people from getting guns. It's only hindering the good people that want to protect themselves from being able to protect themselves.
It is WMAY Springfield.
More help for Ukraine as the country marks 1 year since Russia's deadly invasion. The U.S. pledging another $2 billion towards the fight, while China